So you want to test your RxJS code. This is awesome. But which kind of tests is best suited to get this job done? The wrong decision can cost you hours, days, or even weeks of development effort. When it comes to RxJS testing, we have two options: asynchronous tests or synchronous tests. On the one hand, we have the asynchronous tests, which are provided by every modern testing library. On the other hand, we have the synchronous tests, which are enabled by marble diagrams, which come with RxJS itself. In this video, I assume that you have some basic knowledge of RxJS. If you don't, you can quickly catch up in this video. It also doesn't hurt if you are familiar with at least one modern JavaScript testing library, like Jest, vtest, or Jesmine. The examples in this video are written in vtest, because that's my favorite. So let's have a look at asynchronous tests with RxJS. First, it's worth mentioning that asynchronous tests doesn't necessarily mean that we have to run timers and intervals in real time. We can take those timers in every modern testing library. We have some helper functions that enable us to convert our observables to promises. First value from and last value from. So let's have a look at some code. In this example, we want to check whether an observable countTicks emits a subsequent value every second. So first we derive a promise from our observable. We use the buffer count operator to collect three values. This is the first value that is emitted by the observable. The first value from function returns a promise, which is resolved when the first value is emitted by the observable. Now we proceed in the virtual time by 3 seconds. Finally, we can check whether the emitted values match our expectation. So this is how you can write asynchronous tests with RxJS. Now let's have a look at synchronous marble tests. The first thing we notice is that we have to create a test scheduler. This test scheduler is framework agnostic, so we have to tell it how to check whether an expectation is met. The test scheduler has a run function. Within the scope of the callback we pass to this run function, we can schedule synchronous observables. For this, the test scheduler passes us some helper functions, which we can use to create those synchronous observables. It also provides us other helper functions like expectObservable to check whether our observable behaves like we described with the marble syntax. To get our countTicks observable to work with synchronous testing, we have to rewrite it. We cannot simply use the timer function to create our clock, because it is asynchronously scheduled. Instead, we create a factory function which returns our countTicks observable. This way we can provide any source observable for our countTicks observable. Now we can create our synchronously scheduled cold observable with the marble syntax. You can look up the marble syntax in the docs if you are interested. Within 3 seconds we have 3 emissions. Now that we have our clock, we can create our countTicks observable. Finally, with the expectObservable function, we can check whether our observable behaves as we expect. Additionally, with this marble syntax we ensure that one value is emitted every second. So now we know how roughly those two types of tests work. Let's discuss which kind of test is better. Some time ago I gave marble tests a try. The marble syntax looked quite promising. You can exactly expect which value is emitted at which time. On top of this, you can check when each subscription takes place and is cancelled again. This information can be valuable in some situations, but in general, we don't want to couple our test code too tightly to our implementation. As soon as you change anything in the implementation, your test is likely to break. This makes refactorings and other code changes more difficult. In some cases, it makes sense to simplify your API and switch from observables to promises. In this case, you can rewrite your whole tests for this function. In the known issues section of Marble tests is also stated that you cannot combine Marble tests with promises. This is a problem because nowadays promises are omnipresent in JavaScript. So you often find yourself writing wrapper APIs for those promise-based APIs just to enable your Marble tests. This is the main issue I see with Marble tests. Tests shape your design and architecture of the application. And in this case, it's shaping our APIs in a bad way. In some situations it may be a good decision, for example if you want to use the laziness or the cancelability of observables, but in general you don't need this. You can imagine that this trap can cost you a lot of time. This is what happened to us in one project, so I decided to drop Marble tests altogether. It was an interesting experience to learn about Marble tests, but in review it was just a waste of time. I hope this video helps you to make a good decision for your RxJS testing strategy. If you want to know why I prefer Vitest as a testing library, you can watch this video next. Have a nice day, stay awesome, and remember, never stop learning. See you in the next video.